Hello, my dear members. Okay, today is the 6th of November 2025. I'm going to talk about music today. It's something that I'm doing for the first time. I have never done it before. So I'm going to take you on a journey from Gregorian chant to classical music to folklore to mm, sentimental ballads to rock or popular music to the effect that it has on animals. Yes, how for human. Okay, let me restart my thought here. I was reading about some experiments that were done about plants and about animals, and I went to check are animals affected by music? And anyway, one of the things began coming up, but videos. The first one is of a young man who's there playing the guitar in a field, and animals actually come over and approach him. And uh, I thought it was a little bit, I wondered whether it was fake because it just everything happens too quickly. He's there playing, and then all the animals come, and no. But then there is another video of this young man saying how he started, that he was just playing one day there, and he told that the animals were actually coming to him. And then he expanded that and he went to zoos and then this and that. And there are other people. I saw another one with a man playing the piano. I think he's in a stable somewhere, something similar. And he has, it couldn't have been a stable because it wasn't horses. It was, I think it was an elephant somewhere. But anyway, you see the elephant and how they react. I thought, well, okay, whether the videos are fake, I'm going to put some links in the description, okay, just in case you're interested. Because although I thought at first that it was a little bit weird, perhaps a little bit fake, nevertheless, when they explain it and you see the young man saying, look, this is how I went here and look, and he stays there and then you see there. Anyway, what I thought was, well, obviously animals hear. They have the sense of hearing. Yeah. They have the sense of smell, as we know. They have the sense of hearing. The question is, do they act, does that have an effect on them? Do they react to it? And all these videos seem to suggest that yes, they actually do react to this. Anyway, enough about that. But uh, music, whether animals react to music, in any case, um, music is the language of something. Wouldn't it be fantastic if animals actually do react? I'm just thinking, since we can do AI and all these wonderful things, wouldn't it be a marvelous um, research project to see whether we could, in fact, through music, communicate with them? I'm sure we could do something like that. Come to anyway, that's me. So it's certainly the language of something. We hear it. Okay, so when we listen, for example, to Beethoven, um, we are not just hearing notes, obviously, yeah. So we are hearing in many of his symphonies and even his sonatas, we hear a world in turmoil, we see the late and late 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, when Europe was trembling under revolution and restoration of the monarchy and all these things, when faith and monarchy were collapsing and reason itself was being tested in a way. Um, Beethoven's music reflects this struggle. for sure. He gives rhythm a prominence that in classical music had never been given before. He was a revolutionary in music. His music is a revolutionary act in itself. He raises what is lower, rhythm, force, and lets it battle with what is higher, the melody, the tune, order, meaning. And the two fight each other, and then rhythm takes over and practically strangles the melody, and then melody that is almost dead comes back a little, little by little, reflecting his world. Listen to the Appassionata sonata. Yeah, it begins with a beautiful, almost serene melody. Everything is fine, peace, tranquility. Then the rhythm surges in uh, relentless, sorry, relentless, overpowering until the melody is practically cut off, strangled. It is said that Lenin loved this piece of music. I don't know. Perhaps he heard in it the sound of revolution, the distraction of form, of melody, of reason. To begin with, let's go back to Aristotle as usual. Okay, so Aristotle taught that the soul has three levels. The soul for him was obviously not the as we understand it in Christianity, but the soul, the inner man, had three levels. Okay, the vegetative that we share with plants, the sensitive that we share with animals and plants, animals, and the intellective, yes, unique to the human being. And music touches all these levels, all these layers. If I can use the example of a soul to express a sort of a higher meaning, let's imagine that the soul has a higher part of the soul and a lower part of the soul. And some music will go, like Gregorian chant, will go straight to the higher, and polyphony, I'll explain this in a minute, okay. And polyphony, beautiful as it is, Palestrina, for example, it's a little bit lower because it pleases the ear. It pleases the ear, and so it retains something to do with the body. It's a lower form. Music touches all three. It can move the body. It can stir the emotions, not only in classical music, but even in, not even folklore music. In the many countries where folklore has been kept from, your elders. And may I say that I have noticed that I'm going to say this because I think it's true. It is in Catholic countries, in Christian countries, that the folklore of your elders, the harvest, the fiestas of the harvest was good, and all that that tradition that has been passed on, they have retained. Where the community is important, they have retained their folklore. It is in other countries when cut off from the past, they haven't retained it. But in any case, it stirs the emotions to a point where sometimes that folklore music means much more than the national anthem even. It's automatic. You react to it with your body, with your emotions. It seems that even plants and animals respond to music. Many years ago, many people, I think I was one among them, um, smiled when the king, well, at the time, Prince Charles, you remember that a few years back when he said that he talked to plants and so on. We all either laughed or smiled and they're talking to plants. But it's not that impossible to think that all forms of life react to sound. In experiments, in this one in Colorado, United States, but there have been very many experiments done similar to this. In this experiment in Colorado, scientists placed identical plants in 4 boxes. It was the same plant, okay? It was the same soil, it was the same light, it was the same temperature, it was absolutely the same everything. 4 different boxes. To one in this particular setting, they piped in Gregorian music, Gregorian chant. In another, they piped in classical music. In another, they didn't pipe in anything, complete silence. And in the fourth, they piped in rock music. And the result, as you can expect, somehow intuitively, was that the plants exposed to chant grew strong, and those given rock music actually withered and died. And this experiment has been done a few times. Why? We are told that even cows produce. I read this. I don't remember whether they say that when they if you pipe in music, nice sort of music, I don't remember whether they said that they produce more milk or the milk flowed better. I don't remember, but it was something to do with when they were milking cows that they saw the effect of music nearby, that the cows could hear it. Whether every detail of this is true or not, I think it points to something profound, though, that music moves through all levels of life, vegetable, animal, and human. But only in man does it rise towards the intellect, meaning, towards meaning. Every piece of music has three, well, more, but to summarize, 3 main elements: melody, harmony, and rhythm. The melody is the line, the tune, the bearer of meaning. Harmony is the accompaniment, okay, the color, the atmosphere, yeah. Rhythm is the pulse, the bodily energy that carries it forward. Of this, melody is the highest. It belongs to the intellective faculty of the soul. It speaks directly to the mind and to the spirit. Gregorian chant is pure melody, is the highest form of music. Let me speak about this for a second. It is music without harmony, without percussion, without any beat imposed from outside. It has rhythm, but the rhythm is intrinsic to it. It's intrinsic, it's inside it. It breathes with the words themselves, following the natural flow of a sacred prayer. We must make a distinction here on Gregorian chant, because I thought, even though I'm not very good at editing, so I get all confused, but I thought this would be a very good time for me to bring in a recording of Gregorian chant. And I went to the one that looked the most real. There is on the cover, there is a monk there like this. And I said, okay, and I started playing, and I realized it wasn't Gregorian chant at all. Not in what it means, okay? It was singing. It was people singing Gregorian chant. They were professional singers. Yeah, but that was not Gregorian chant. That was the form of Gregorian chant. It was music. But Gregorian chant is not music. Gregorian chant is a prayer. And so the difference is that, well, first of all, even in the form, they didn't keep the necessary pauses. They didn't. Okay, Gregorian chant is a prayer. Okay. When you pray using music, but using melody, but it is a prayer, it's not a song. Okay. So when you're praying, there is a difference if you're saying, God forgive me for I am a sinner. And if you're speaking from the heart, it's going to sound different. God forgive me for I'm all that. Okay, so you see the difference there. If you hear, and I don't think we can find very many monks in that situation at that time, and we don't find many because obviously I doubt that they called recording companies to record them pray, and perhaps sometimes they have done so, I don't know, but it's very difficult to find a real true one. You will hear that I was taught that, okay, so how to sing. And I remember as little kids, we used to laugh because we couldn't, to us, it was funny. Why? Well, first of all, at the end of the phrase, da, 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 you can hardly hear it. The end of it has to die off in sound. And to us kids, it sounded funny. How da, 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 and we used to laugh at it. No, I understand it better. Now, there are pauses there. That is the voice praying through that sound, through that melody. And then halfway in the sentence, there is a pause. It starts again. And the end of the phrase, the end of the sentence, you can hardly hear it. You hear the monks praying using melody. When it is done professionally, you don't hear that. Sometimes they don't even pause in half the sentence, and they certainly don't die off at the end of the sentence. They probably don't know the meaning of it. Well, it's the equivalent of with your body of bowing. You can hardly hear it. Anyway, if you know what you're talking about, you go to one of these professional recordings and you realize that that is not Gregorian chant. Those are professional singers. It still sounds beautiful. Certainly for me better than pom 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 rock music, but it's not Gregorian chant. So the notes I had here were there is there is that you see, I took a little bit of time to write things down. So there is the Gregorian chant of performance, sung beautifully, professionally, perfectly in tune, recorded in concert halls or cathedrals for audiences and albums and so on. And then there is the Gregorian chant of prayer, the real chant, sung not to impress or performed, but to pray, sung by monks who are not performing for others. They just pray to God through those means that they have been passed on in the church from illo tempore. All right. In a monastery, chant sounds actually different. It is quieter, it is humbler, it is slower. I put here slower, it's just different. The voices blend into one another, and at the end of each phrase, there is that faint, almost inaudible tail, the echo of a breath, the reverence of silence, humbly bowing. It is, in other words, it is not sung to be heard by an audience. It is sung to be offered. Yeah, we see in the Mass looking at the audience and going through the motions, and that almost mysterious, not offered for the audience, that thing about being offered to God. I think that's the main difference that we have to be aware nowadays. Okay, that the audience has taken the important part. Gregorian chant is offered, is not performed. And that changes everything. So, true Gregorian chant is not a song. It is a form of prayer that uses melody to lift words beyond speech. Lift words beyond speech in prayer. The singer disappears. The self dissolves. It is the opposite of performance. It's anonymity almost, yeah, before the sacred. And that is why it penetrates so deeply. In real chant, the sound seems to pass through the ear. The ear is just a passageway. It doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop in the ear and say, how beautiful. It just goes, it's a passage, it's a corridor, turn, okay? It doesn't stop there. It's a doorway through which the music enters the soul. It's the same in the visual arts, for example, if we can compare them. Okay, think of a drawing or think of a sculpture, okay? The lines carry the meaning. They are the melody of sight. The color is the harmony. It decorates, it pleases, but without the lines of the drawing, if you just have color, there is no form, no thought there. Of course, in abstract painting, you can have different colors like that, but I'm sure that are beautiful in some sort of way, but you need the form. Yeah, otherwise in a sculpture, it has to have a form. Yeah, that's the meaning. If you destroy the line, the meaning disintegrates. You get pure color, okay, sensation, but sensation without the line is sensation without the intellect. Modern painting often did this precisely. And modern music too. Harmony and hold on, I'm looking at my note here. For modern composers, even of classical music, melody, uh, for many of them, disappeared almost entirely. What you have is harmony and rhythm that remained, but the melody seems to have gone. Stravinsky, for all his brilliance, uh, I don't think he could write melody to save his life. Um, well, anyway, it's harmony and it's rhythm, but without melody. He gave us structure and excitement, but not song, not the line that carries the meaning. And so, as melody vanished, so did the connection to the intellective soul, and music descended to the lower faculties. Nothing wrong with that, but it descended to the lower faculties, to the senses and to the passions. You can trace the descent from chant, pure melody, prayer, to Beethoven, melody and rhythm locked in battle. Melody, rhythm, and then melody, and then rhythm, and in battle. The 18th and the 19th century, revolution, restoration, and chaos, finally a little bit of tranquility. You see it there in his music. And then from Beethoven, we get to modern music, ballads, sentimental ballads, Sinatra, ballads where you, there are lovely ballads, but, those that immediately you hear and you go immediately with your head from left to right. We all know them, nothing wrong with them, but that is music of emotion without intellect. And then rhythm alone. If you have rhythm alone, noise, aggression, in other words, to that modern celebration of pulse without form. In the end, what remains is just rhythm, the beating of the body without the thought of the mind. Well, we want to be tragic about it, we could philosophize, Our music mirrors our civilization, it always does. When melody dies, meaning dies. When harmony dominates, we live for feeling. When rhythm dominates, we live for force. Since I don't know you personally, I don't know what kind of music you listen to, But if you're not very much into classical music, for example, okay, after this, go to Beethoven, okay, because you will see there very clearly, you really will, because he struggled to keep this melody alive. You can see it. Go to the Eroica Symphony, the fifth, also in Egmont. Egmont is music put to a lovely theater play by the greatest German writer, Goethe. Do I have it here? Yeah. This is what gave me the idea, actually, to do this on music, because I was reading, I can't see myself here, but I was reading this book, which is the Classic Theatre, second volume, and is 5 German plays, and I just finished rereading, actually, Egmont by Goethe. Okay, and Egmont is about that time in the 16th century, the Spanish Empire, the Netherlands, the Reformation, the struggle for independence from Spain, all that, a new world. The old world was going to die off. Yeah, the old Catholic world and a new world would reappear. And it's about that. Okay, so theater play. Egmont is count. Well, anyway, so Beethoven put music precisely. He would be the right one to put music to this play. Two worlds fighting one another. You can hear the rhythm. In the other symphonies, the drums, the pulse rise up and overwhelm the melody, only for the melody, little by little, practically died off and then returns after the storm. Very fragile, but triumphant in a certain way. So this was Beethoven's music is that sound of an age struggling for balance between order and revolution, intellect and passion. You see it all there. Today, as always, our music has become a mirror of the modern soul. Brilliant in sound, if you want, astonishing in technique, yes, but often empty of thought. We have rhythm without reason. We have emotion without truth. We have form without meaning. It is not that people can't make music, it's that they no longer have anything to say with it. And perhaps that's what makes real Gregorian chant so haunting today. Even the not real one. People, what is this? It reminds us of what we've lost. Not just musical beauty, not just musical beauty. The spiritual posture that made that beauty possible. Silence, humility, contemplation. People don't understand that anymore. And that is why there is a certain attraction to it. The monks sing, they do not seek applause. They just pray. They seek to disappear so that what remains is not performance, but prayer. That is why their chant, though simple, reaches higher than any symphony. It goes straight from the ear to the soul. Doesn't stop in the ear there. Polyphony, Palestrina, very nice, but it pleases the ear. So even though it is nothing wrong with it, but it's a lower form. It involves the senses now. Yeah. So perhaps the question is not whether our music still moves us, but whether it still is able to lift us. It moves us. My goodness, I hear the folklore of my land, and I get up. I feel happy. Even a mariachi from Mexico. Da, 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 da. It moves us. But does it lift us in the spiritual sense? Because when melody dies, the mind begins to die with it. When the melody, the tune, the intellect dies, the mind begins to die with it. And when the mind dies, all that remains really is rhythm here. The heartbeat of a world that no longer knows why it beats. And that's the problem. I think it is a problem. Anyway, that is my thing about music. I was going to say something else. No, but it doesn't follow. I was just going to say about this thing that I see, this conversation with the Vatican about the Virgin Mary and there, but that has to be completely different. Only I thought of it because I thought of the ear. Never mind. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening to me.